Woo. Okay, so I'm going to do this with what we call a continuous shot. There's going to be no cuts because we want you to see that this is all done in one shot. We're not trying to fake you out. So she's going to start wide and it's going to move in so you can see the ember forming in the notch. Now here's for everybody's favorite technique, the bow and drill. Go ahead, show the notch now. It's really filling up. So I'm going to be very careful until I see that glowing red there. Did you see that? There we go. Now that I know I have a glowing ember, I can remove it from the notch. There we go. Okay. This is why we keep our friends close and our Tinder bundles closer. Still continuous shot, no cuts. Woo! In that bird's nest. Now here we go. Now at first I got to blow very gentle. It's just dust. I don't want to blow it apart. There we go. Woo. So there it is. I can't wait to show you how to do this. So I'm going to tell you a little about the pieces and how everything works, and then I'm going to show you how to do both, how to gather all this, how to make it all with a little more than a little multi-tool like this. So with the bow and drill, it's named that because it's mostly these two pieces doing the work, right? Here is our bow and here is our drill. What makes this the only type of friction fire I would consider even close to a viable survival technique is you don't have to be super specific about your materials. Indeed, you don't even have to know what species you're using. You're basing this on the material properties. This string here, twisting the drill around it, gives us some mechanical advantage. Using this bow to turn the drill gives us more RPMs than we could ever do by hand, like with the hand drill. So this will give us thousands of RPMs. This drill is going to turn at thousands of rotations per minute when I spin the drill. And because I have a handhold like this, again, bow, bowstring, drill, handhold. And now because I have a handhold like this, I can put my body weight on this. I don't have to use my arm strength to lean on the drill. Come on in a little close here, show these parts. So I don't have to use my body weight, I don't have to use my arm strength to push on the drill. I can anchor this and lean down. So I can use all nearly 200 pounds of my body weight on the drill and get thousands of RPMs. That's why when you saw me turn this, I got ember so quickly and smoke so quickly. Of course, this is my job, so I'm used to doing this. So of course, by this stage, I can do it well. However, these materials and this technique is just so important. So here we have the baseboard, also called a fireboard or hearth. You'll hear all three of those names. I like to use baseboard because it's pretty descriptive. It really lets you know what part of the bow drill set it is. Now the way this works is the hard drill goes through the much softer baseboard. We want this drill to be much harder than the board. So as we put our body weight on it and it spins, it drills through and it creates that dust. The dust fills the notch here. And as the notch gets full and the dust is all carbonized from the heat that made it, and it's pinned against the red hot spinning drill and stuck in that heat chamber, it ignites into the ember that you saw. So I'm using this branch as the simplest form of an example of a bow. So I'm using a dead branch because a green branch can flex, and that will steal from the force we're trying to use on our friction fire. We want enough bend. I'm going to pull out my trusty plumb bob here, that when we put our string across, we have more than 2 inches from the top of the curve to the tip of the string. We don't want too straight of a branch, and that's because when I tie this on, I can control the tension of the bow with a bit of grip there. I can make it more tight or just leave it as is, depending on my needs. Okay, so it just has to be strong enough to not bend or break easily, and with enough curve to leave at least 2 inches between the tip of the arc and the string to allow for a little bit of tension work with the grip. Now, on this end, I have a section where I can tie my string on here, right? And that's great, that'll hold it. But this end I don't, so I'll have to carve a notch here to hold it. As far as the length goes, I want it, go ahead and pull out here. I want it as long as my arm. Go ahead and show this. So I'm gonna hold my arm forward. I want it from my shoulder there to the center of my hand. Can you see that? Okay, good. That's what I'm looking for with the length, okay? That's really optimum. So I'm gonna trim this to size, put my notches in, and we'll show you how to string it up. Now, I don't want to go too deep to ruin the integrity of the stick, and I don't want to be too close to the end where it could break off. Just deep enough to hold the string there. Can't slide out. So I can show you how to make string, but the easiest way to get your bow done is to just use a shoe or bootlace like this. So I can take this off, get my fire made, put it right back on, and be good to go. As you get good at making natural cordages from plant fibers and such, and really good at the bow drill, you can practice using materials like that, but for now, this will be your best bet. So here I have a bit of a rabbit ears, so I can hook this around here. Just gonna twist this around a bit. Now, to tie this, let's make sure can you see the whole bow here? See the whole bow. So I'm just gonna get this string about straight. Okay, not tight. I don't want it to sag like that. I'm gonna pull it pretty much straight there, just about straight. Wrap the string through the notch there. Okay, and then just around like so. No problem there. 1, 2, just a little overhand knot. Okay, and make sure this isn't just dangling at the end. Now, you may have to tie and retie this several times to get it just right. In my opinion, it's about the hardest piece to find because that's the strictest requirements. It's the one that we want to take the most time on. So it has to be pretty darn straight. We want it no thicker, or not much thicker than our thumb, and no thinner than our forefinger. We'd like it to be at least as long as our hand. So we have a long branch like this, about 7 feet tall. We only need one section of this branch to meet those requirements. Now, if I can get it about 2 to 3 inches longer than my hand, that's perfect. So this section right here, Looks pretty straight to me, close to thumb size, which I like. See this lower section here? Good. And now what's important about this is when you see the bark here, you'll see that this is a dead branch. Clearly there's no vegetation or greenery left on this. However, it's not rotten. The bark is still in good quality. It's not gray. The bark isn't peeling off. So when a piece of wood, a branch first dies, it gets very hard. After that, it begins to rot. So you could say it's about kind of like a rigor mortis stage. So we want something that died this season, this year, something very hard. We call that cured out here. So it's cured just right for our uses. So with something on the thicker side, like down here, let's show this. So this is a little thicker than my forefinger, almost a little thicker than my thumb. So I can make this about 3 inches longer than my hand. But let's show this section right here. So we have a very straight branch here. Can you see this? We have a very straight branch here, but this is barely the width of my finger. So I would have this on the shorter side. So this would be only as long as my hand, because when it's thin like this, it can bend when I put my body weight on it. The thicker ones can be longer, right? Because they won't bend. So you're gonna have to find a balance in between the shorter, the longer, the thicker, and the thinner. You're gonna have to gather several of these and experiment with them. Again, what's optimal for me is a piece 2 to 3 inches longer than my hand and about the width of my thumb.
Recording.
Now, if there's anything my string can catch on when I'm turning it, I wanna cut it off. Now, I don't wanna dig in too hard here and create a flat surface on the drill. So, see how I can slide like this? Okay, now I know where the plane is on the drill, so I can use that. So now I kept with the curvature of the drill, but I got this little knot off. Some will be thicker, some will be smaller. There we go. So this is a business end. So this drill is about friction. So I want it pretty flat, okay? I want to increase the surface area so it'll grind on the baseboard. Now all this stuff here I have to get rid of. Now I have this log here so I can control the knife easily. I'm not gonna slip, I'm not gonna hit myself, and I'm not gonna hit any kind of sand or rocks, right? So I'm gonna slice a bit with the knife, forward or backward as I push, okay? I'm not just gonna try and force the pieces off straight down. I wanna let the surface of the blade do a lot of the work. So slide forward and push. Let the sharp knife do the work. You don't have to push too hard if you have a good tool. Okay, now that I've gotten it pretty flat, so we're going to be inserting this into a bit of a divot, a pilot hole, if you will, in the baseboard. So to get it to lock in and not slide out, I'm just going to carve the edges just a little bit here. I'm on about a 45. Again, I'm not carving a point. Then I can just round it a bit. And do the rest here. Get rid of it here. See the way that locks in there now? And I don't have a point, so I have more surface area for the friction to create more dust, but it still locks in, and that's very quick. And see, just rubbing it a bit here, working it for just a few seconds, see how it rounds the hole off there and it rounds the drill off. So now I'm going to carve the tip. I want this to fit into my handhold real well. Now you can carve a point and that's okay, but I want the sides a little vertical if I can, so it locks into my handhold a little better. So I'm doing a bit of a flick here, in and up with my knife. So as I reduce it, It almost forms like a peg that locks into the handhold instead of a tip. Now, when you start spinning this at high speed, you'll have troubles when you first do this with wrist wobble or the drill moving, and it'll pop out of the handhold, pop out of the top or the bottom. So having the top like a peg instead of as a point will help you lock it in. Now, I get it. If you're new to carving, this will be a very hard technique. So you can go ahead and carve a point on there and it should lock in pretty good. But in optimal conditions, once you get good at it, we flick, right? And if you slice a little bit as you do this, you don't have to press hard. It takes good shavings off, a little at a time. A little at a time. We could take more off, but we can't put more back on. See, these are thin shavings. And I want to make sure that the tip is in line with the bottom. So I'm going to work on that and show you the plumb bob when I'm done. So what you're looking at is a bit of a plumb bob, if you will. Believe it or not, this is a pretty ancient engineering tool. So we've suspended a weight from this string, and once it settles, we know it's straight up and down. So what we're looking for in a drill, and I want to give you this example. So it can have a little bit of bend in it. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight, but the bottom and the top have to be in line because that's where they're both going into a socket. So if you insert this into a socket and you insert this to a socket, they're not straight, they're bent. They're not gonna turn, they're gonna pop out. Think of it as a bent rim on a bicycle, right? So you can have some bends in between the centers, but as far as the top and the bottom, they have to be in line. Now, whichever end is more straight with the plumb bob, that's the end I'm gonna use for my friction, for my drill, okay? That's gonna be the business end, the end going through the board. Now the end that may have some curve to it, I'm gonna carve my tip on that end because I can carve that in line with the other end, and the friction on the top is not important. So for the baseboard, the Hearth, the piece we're drilling through, we want a piece as rotten as possible, but it still provides enough resistance where the drill's not just gonna crunch right through it. Here. Now these broken tree trunks where a tree has come down or a large branch is really good for this. It splits along the grain and we can pop pieces off like this. So we want a piece, and I'll tell you a telltale sign of a good baseboard is when it feels much lighter than it looks, like balsa wood. Now it doesn't matter the type of wood, again, it's the material properties. So we want something that's as cured as possible. It's gray like this, it's fracturing, it's beginning to soften. In a way, it's kind of carbonizing and getting easier to light. So a piece of wood that looks like this, of course, would be much easier to light on fire than a nice brown, solid, marbled looking piece of wood, of course. And that's what we're going after. And often these splits on the underside here can protect it from moisture and rainfall, especially if it's under the tree canopy like this. So with boards like this, we need as little carving as possible. So if we're getting something with a stone chip or only a small multi-tool like I've been using in this video, we can peel good boards off. We only need it to be a little more than a ½ inch thick. An inch thick is maximum. Very lightweight, not too split, no knots in the wood, right? Hard enough to do that, but still pretty easy to break. Now this happens to be cottonwood again, which again is a very good fire making tree. So again, that doesn't matter though, because just about any wood will cure to this point. We just have to find it at the right time. So I'm gonna get a little more of this. We're gonna make some fire. So here we have one of the baseboards we gathered. Now I only need it to be about a ½ inch thick. It could be up to an inch, no thicker than that, and really no thinner than this. I want a clean edge here where I'm gonna carve my notch, which catches the ember. I need a flat spot on top to post the drill on. And I want to keep it flat on the bottom, which this just split kind of naturally flat there. So it sits well and doesn't rock and shake when I try and make my ember with it. So I need to make a pilot hole here. So when I get my drill turning here, it can just fly all over the place if it doesn't have a spot to sit in. So I can go ahead and I'm going to start in the middle. I can mark how wide the drill is going to be, and I can carve a pilot hole. So I'm not just going to drill my knife in here and turn. I'm going to go around like this, about where the circumference of the drill would be. See, I go in on an angle. I'm just going to work that out. So once I get my pilot hole formed out, I'm gonna kind of grind these together, make sure that stays in a bit so it doesn't just pop out when I try and spin it. I'm gonna try and round these off to each other a little bit. Once I feel like that's good, I'm ready to do what's called the burnout. So to mount the drill head, I'm just gonna go across here, grab the string, hook under, and rotate toward myself. Now you should have to force that on a bit, or it's probably going to be too loose. Now I have my drill carved, I have this planed, and I have a bit of a pilot hole. So like I said, it's time for what we call the burnout. Now all I want to do is just get this spinning in here for a little bit. Often we'll start to see smoke and it'll start to blacken, and we'll know it's a good board and a good drill and it's reacting well. If my drill just goes right through it or breaks the board, I know it's a bad board. But really this lets us know if our materials are good, and it kind of rounds everything off. It forms this hole perfectly to this drill so we can make a proper fire attempt. So now, go ahead and watch the tip of the drill. So when you first rough carve it, we want to take it slow, just getting it moving a little bit so it doesn't fly out. Once it feels like it's going to stay, then we can go a little faster. And we can do a longer stroke. Getting a little sand in there, so I'm gonna lift this up here. There we go. Okay, that's turning real good now. It's making good dust. The drill has sunken into the board. I don't want to go all the way through. So here we go. See, the drill is rounded off now. We have this dust. And we can see the full diameter of the hole. Now I'm going to save this dust. I'm going to put this in my Tinder bundle because this will help me make fire. And now we see what we're dealing with and we're ready for our notch. So now I'm going to make the notch that catches the dust formed when the drill goes through the board. So I don't want the notch longer than just about half the distance across the circle. So I'll shave it down a little. If the notch is too long and narrow, as you could say, it can't breathe. That's a good distance for me. Now here's a little diagram. I want this notch to be as wide as this hole at the mouth. I want it to go roughly a quarter of the way in. A third is fine. It has to be less than half. So I make a mark with the tip there. Then I connect it. Okay. And now this triangle here, I'm going to remove all this, and this will give me the perfect size notch. What I want this to be is as wide and short as possible and still hold the drill in. See, if it's too wide, the drill can just pop out, but still narrow enough to catch dust. So keep the drill in, catch the dust, but be as wide and short as possible and still do both of those things. That allows for optimal heat and oxygen. So now a little bit of technique. I'm going to face those lines toward myself. I'm going to lay my knife very flat, start at the tip, and just press in and let the knife slice. Okay, let the knife do the work. Take a little at a time. Don't rush this. You could take more off, but you can't put it back on, and if you ruin this notch, it's unlikely that you'll get fire. This notch is very important. If it's too narrow, even with great materials, it just might not ignite. If it's too wide, it won't catch the dust and trap it against the hot drill, or it might let the drill keep flying out of the hole. So I'm just taking little slices at a time. So I have a saw on my multi-tool, but it removes a little bit too much material too quickly, so I'm not going to use that. So the notch has to go in to the pilot hole. And here we go. Now it doesn't have to be this perfect V. We just want it inside these dimensions. So see, it has to travel into this hole here, or it's unlikely that we'll get ignition. So as the drill, this hard drill is going through the soft baseboard, it makes all that dust. The dust gets funneled into this notch and it builds up. Once the notch fills, the dust is pinned against the tip of the red hot drill as it spins, and then it ignites. So as long as the notch catches the dust and the drill, but is wide enough to let it breathe, we get ignition into an ember. There's a little heat chamber here. So here's a troubleshooting tip. If you're drilling and you're getting a lot of dust building up around the circle and not in the notch, you'll know that the notch is either not wide enough or it's not going into the hole good enough, because it should be funneling it very quickly into this notch. Now I want to show you a technique called batoning. If you're doing this in an area that's been wet for quite some time, maybe you're in the boreal forest or Pacific Northwest, you may have to just find the driest piece available. You may not get anything that's just bone dry. So we'll look for the driest piece possible, preferably off the ground, under a very protected part of the tree or bush where it's getting as little rain impact as possible. And we'll have to split it away. So we're going to want to get something at least 3 inches wide here. So that gives us time. It'd have to be raining for weeks for it to absorb all the water through the middle if it's off the ground and protected. So I'm going to get what's called a full tang knife like this. That means the metal that forms the blade goes all the way through the handle. So I'm going to pound on this, which I'm going to do here. I want to make sure that this doesn't break or rotate off at the handle. So we use a full tang knife. This is nearly 1/2 inch thick. This is a very thick blade, and that's for chopping and batoning like this. So if you're in an area with thick timber, this is really good. So I position this with as much sticking out past the object I'm batoning as possible, and I'm going to press hard on the handle. This is why we call it batoning. So I'm going to hammer the outside away like that. Now I'm going to do that on both sides. See, in the middle first to get it started, then we can go out to the edges to baton through. And we'll have our inner board like this, which we can shave down to our measurements. This will also be how you get splits in wet weather wood. So if I couldn't find any dry firewood, I could keep splitting the inside away from this and use these sticks for firewood. If I don't have dry tinder, I can use these sticks to make piles of shavings that can form my tinder bundle. So this is just a little bit of an introduction to the wet weather portion, so you have a concept to it. But that'll be coming, doing this in the wet weather, doing this with no knife at all, that'll be in later videos. Now let's talk about gathering friction fire tinder. So what caught my attention here is the type of bark on this tree. Now it doesn't matter what type of tree or what type of brush it is, it's the material properties we're after. We're looking for something here that can hold an ember, that we can put that in and it will grow and grow and grow and produce a flame. So what I see here is this bark. I'm going to show this here. I'm going to peel this out. See how this just peels away from the tree? Now watch. When I squeeze this, see, it doesn't crumble like a potato chip. It shreds, kind of like hair. There's a lot of trees and brush that do this. Just about anything in the cedar family and our junipers, a lot of sagebrush, they all do this. Some eucalyptus and gum trees. You can find this type of bark all over the world. So I'm going to gather a big nest of this, a big bundle of this bark to use for our friction fires. So let me process our tinder bundle. It's important that we break down our fibers fairly fine. So they ignite easily. Think about trying to light the middle of a piece of paper on fire versus some paper shreds. Once we have it very fine like this, it's very important to compact it. I want to get this as dense as possible. So almost like a dreadlock. So I'm going to form this into a bird's nest shape. And I'm going to be introducing a hot ember here. It's just made from hot ash. So if there's too big of an empty space, if it's just loose like this, then the ember can hit these empty spaces and just hit air and go out. So with a bundle like this, it's very compact. The ember will just grow and grow and grow, and I'll blow on it to provide the oxygen. So you want this very tight. So see how it just sticks together really well here? It looks like it'd be a lovely nest for a lovely bird. And we call this a bird's nest because it's shaped a lot like it for a good reason. We're gonna put the ember in here so it can burn out, right? So fire doesn't burn down very good, right? So we put an ember on top, it's not gonna go down very good. If we put it in this, it can grow in every direction, and we blow and blow and blow, and the ember gets bigger and it hits all these little fine pieces, and it makes us a lovely fire. So here's my tinder bundle. We want it at least this large, at least enough to fill both hands. Can never really have too much tinder. You don't want to be blowing and blowing and blowing out, especially if it's a moist day and it just keeps growing as an ember and then consumes all the tinder before it can ignite into a fire. So get it at least 2 handfuls like this, nice and thick and tightly woven. So this is quite a bit of the bark here, as you saw, but since it's compacted so much, it makes this nest. So here's our bark bundle. So stinging nettle contains ballast fibers. These fibers run the length of the plant and they give it strength and flexibility. They're usually processed at the end of the plant's life when people make commercial rope or cordage out of them, like again with hemp or any milkweed or any dogbane species or even nettles. So here I have the dead stalk, and you can see the fibers are very noticeable when you break it. So here we just do a break and shake. And when farmers and processors, they process these fibers, they get them, they dry them, and they break them up with a machine, of course, and then shake out the stalks. much like we're gonna do. Now, when you see the fibers dried like this, you'll begin to realize why it's used as a cotton substitute. Clothing made from stinging nettles to the touch is just about indistinguishable from cotton. And even in World War II, when we had Germany all surrounded and they couldn't get cotton imports anymore, or a lot of other imports, they harvested wild nettles from the creeks to make uniforms for their soldiers. Or at least that's what I read once. And people from East Germans to all kinds of famine survivors have lived off of the near complete nutrition of the green leaf. It saved a lot of lives in times of famine. Now this, of course, is a great Tinder bundle as well. So if we are going to use some type of leaf for tinder, one way to sample it to see if it's good, of course, any dead, dry vegetation we can get in some circumstances is fine. But if the leaves, when dead, stick together like this, they make a ball like this. Now this is mugwort, sycamore, and lots of other things do this. It has a bit of a fur on the back. Once it's dead and dry, it kind of binds it into these tinder balls. It's a really good trait, and once we put our ember in here, it'll burn like incense and won't go out, and it'll preserve it. So it gives us a long time. It gives us kind of a second chance to make a good fire from our ember. It really helps us out. So we'll show you how this works. So here's our mugwort incense ball. It's really easy to light, and once you do get it lit, it will just burn itself out like incense here. And that's why it's been used for primitive fire making, to catch your spark, as well as to keep pesky insects like flies and mosquitoes away around the world. Some places where insects are fierce, you know, smoke is the only thing that are going to keep these guys away. Places like Alaska and some mountains. And these balls here will just go and go and go and keep you good to go in your working area. You can put a few of these around you, keep those mosquitoes away. Of course, it's excellent in primitive fire making. So here I have my tinder bundle. That's a mix of these 3 different tinders that I kind of want to show you how they react. We have a bunch of dead dry leaves in here, dead shredded grasses and plant fibers like from the nettle. And here's a little mugwort in there too. And again, we have this bird's nest, right? A couple handfuls here, nice and thick. See how woven that is? It looks like a nice little robin can live in there. Now, regardless of the material, it's important that you break your fibers up fine, your leaves up fine, your bits up fine, and compact them very tightly together. So it's one thing to make the ember, but you have a whole new fight once you get it in the bundle and try and make it in a fire. And if you didn't prepare your tinder bundle properly, if it's not long. So stinging nettle contains ballast fibers. These fibers run the length of the plant, and they give it strength and flexibility. They're usually processed at the end of the plant's life, when people make commercial rope or cordage out of them, like again with hemp or any milkweed or any dogbane species or even nettles. So looks a little like mint, doesn't it? Are going to use leaf for, so if we are going to use some type of leaf for tinder, one way to sample it to see if it's good, of course, any dead, dry vegetation we can get in some circumstances is fine. But if the leaves, when dead, stick together like this, they make a ball like this. Now this is mugwort, sycamore, and lots of other things do this. It has a bit of a fur on the back. Once it's dead and dry, it kind of binds it into these tinder balls. It's a really good trait, and once we put our ember in here, it'll burn like incense and won't go out, and it'll preserve it. So it gives us a long time. It gives us kind of a second chance to make a good fire from our ember. It really helps us out. So we'll show you how this works. So here's our mugwort incense ball. It's really easy to light, and once you do get it lit, it will just burn itself out like incense here. And that's why it's been used for primitive fire making, to catch your spark, as well as to keep pesky insects like flies and mosquitoes away around the world. Some places where insects are fierce, you know, smoke is the only thing that are going to keep these guys away. Places like Alaska and some mountains. And these balls here will just go and go and go and keep you good to go in your working area. You can put a few of these around you, keep those mosquitoes away. Of course, it's excellent in primitive fire making. So here I have the dead stalk, and you can see the fibers are very noticeable when you break it. So here we just do a break and shake. And when farmers and processors, they process these fibers, they get them, they dry them, and they break them up with the machine, of course, and then shake out the stalks, much like we're gonna do. Now, when you see the fibers dried like this, you'll begin to realize why it's used as a cotton substitute. Clothing made from stinging nettles, to the touch, is just about indistinguishable from cotton. And even in World War II, when we had Germany all surrounded and they couldn't get cotton imports anymore, or a lot of other imports, they harvested wild nettles from the creeks to make uniforms for their soldiers. Or at least that's what I read once. And people from East Germans to all kinds of famine survivors have lived off of the near complete nutrition of the green leaf. It saved a lot of lives in times of famine. Now this, of course, is a great tinder bundle as well. And once it's broken down like this, it's so soft. It's so luxurious. It's a very lovely fiber. I feel like you could make a pillow out of this. Let's get these last few pieces out and I'll show you how to make rope from it. Go ahead. So here I have my tinder bundle. That's a mix of these 3 different tinders that I kind of want to show you how they react. We have a bunch of dead dry leaves in here, dead shredded grasses and plant fibers like from the nettle. And here's a little mugwort in there too. And again, we have this bird's nest. Right? A couple handfuls here. Nice and thick. See how woven that is? It looks like a nice little robin can live in there. So we're gonna introduce tinder to these 2. Well, we're gonna introduce an ember. So we're gonna introduce an ember to these 2 types of bundles here. And we're gonna show you how they work. Now, regardless of the material, it's important that you break your fibers up fine, your leaves up fine, your bits up fine, and compact them very tightly together. So it's one thing to make the ember, but you have a whole new fight once you get it in the bundle and try and make it in a fire. And if you didn't prepare your tinder bundle properly, if it's not large enough, if it's not compact enough, if it's not broken up enough, that delicate ember that you worked so hard for can go out. So make sure you do this part properly. The bottom side there really shows how compact. Take your time. Do it right. Okay. See the different types of leaves here? You have this interesting shape. And you also have the more willow looking leaf on it. The same exact plant and stalk, in fact. So of course we know it's a great friction fire tinder. Now I do want to give you a note. When it's high humidity, these tinder bundles must be protected. This is very much like cotton and it's absorbent. So if it gets moisture in it at all, it's not the best tinder bundle at all. In fact, that's when it's not large enough, if it's not compact enough, if it's not broken up enough, that delicate ember that you worked so hard for can go out. So make sure you do this part properly. The bottom side there really shows how compact. Take your time, do it right. Now for my handhold, all I need is something that feels good in my grip and will be harder than my bottom piece, than my baseboard or Hearth. That means the drill will go through the bottom piece faster than the top piece. Now in a survival situation, I recommend using a piece of green wood, as that will lubricate the top of the drill and make it spin easier, and it will drill through the top less. But I don't want to kill too much live stuff for this training video, so I'm just going to cut a little piece off this here. I need this to fit inside here, okay? Now I don't want to go too deep. I don't want to go more than a ½ inch deep on this hole, because if it goes in too deep, it's going to grab the size of this. It's going to be hard to spin. So if your hole gets more than a ½ inch deep, it wears its way in more than a ½ inch deep, you're going to carve a new one. So all I'm going to do here is use the tip of my knife to just kind of pare out a nice little hole for my tip. See, I anchor the point and dig. Anchor the point and dig. Anchor the point and dig. The same way we did with our pilot hole for the baseboard. And there we go. See, that fits in there real nicely. So I want to give you guys a little tip. I didn't use this on a demo, but if you have some chapstick, and it's not uncommon for a hiker or backpacker to have chapstick or anything like that, you can put this on the top of your drill, because as you may have noticed when I did the drill, you get a lot of smoke on the top, and see how deep that gets. So you can lubricate this however you want. You can spit in it. If you have any kind of like Neosporin gel in your first aid kit, you can crush up chew up some green leaves in there and use that as well to get it to slide there, to get it to slide. Okay, and a note to the viewer: once this gets too deep, once this gets about a ½ inch or more like this, it can begin to grab the top of the drill. So if it gets real deep like this and it gets real hard to turn, okay, we want to go ahead and make a new, more shallow hole. Okay, if this gets too deep, it will grab the drill and make it hard to turn. If your drill is straight, if your drill is straight on the top and bottom, and your holes are not too deep here, this should spin very easily. It shouldn't be very hard to push and pull. So there's just a couple tips for you. So now I want to show you a little bit more about the notch and the ember. So I want you to pay close attention to the dust. So I'm putting this under the notch here because I don't want my ember to just go into the sand. I need something to catch it. I'm keeping my tinder bundle right here, so once I get the ember, I don't have to move it very far. If I was making a full campfire, I'd have everything set up right here by the bundle. Now, form is very important. I want my foot as close to possible as touching that hole. And it's going to overlap quite a bit, because watch this. When I bend my hand like this, I get that bit of a V right there. That fits on the point of my shin perfectly. I want this to this on the side of my shin. My arm is wrapped around the leg here and pinned on this. If I don't have it pinned here, my wrist is going to wobble. So some of us have a little bit bigger bellies or maybe back injuries or knee injuries. So if you can't wrap your hand around, put it on the inside here, but lodge the wrist against the shin so you don't have this wobble. If you get this wobble, it's going to be really easy for your drill to pop out. Okay, so with my foot right near the drill here, it puts my hand in perfect position to catch this. Now I want my heart over the drill here, so I'm using my body weight here and I'm kind of tripoding. I have 3 points of contact, so I'm leaning and this is catching my weight, so I don't have to press really hard down. And since my wrist is locked on my shin, I don't have to sit here and stabilize it and worry about it shaking. Now I want to keep the bow really straight. Watch this. Really straight. If I pull up on the backstroke, the string will climb up. If I press down on the forward stroke, the string will go down. Watch this. The string can go up. So watch this. The string can go up by accident. It can go down by accident. So once you know how it works, you can actually use that in your favor. So I can go ahead and turn the bow a little this way and press upward on the string. I can get it to go up. I can turn the bow a little this way and press downward on the string. I can get the string to go down. So if I'm getting a good attempt and the string climbs up or down on me and I don't want to stop, I can go ahead and use that technique to put the string where I want it. Of course, when I first start going, I'm going to have the string in the middle of the bow. Now for our fire attempt. So as I get going, get a close up of the notch there. So you'll see as I go, that notch fills with the dust. See that? Once that notch is pretty much full, I want to give myself a few seconds of really good smoke. So once I have it full like that, I want to go ahead and maybe just give it way more speed and power than usual. And look at all that smoke. Right? So I'm going to keep my foot down because this is just dust. If it breaks apart, it can go out. I blow gently, I wave. Now if there was no ember here, the smoke would just blow away. But since there is, when I blow on it, it gets smokier and smokier. So I say, yes, there's an ember. I don't want to lift my foot up too quickly because it could pop up and break the ember apart. So yes, now that I see red, then it's okay to remove. And I want to make sure it stays in the notch. So it's good to, or doesn't come up with the notch when I pull it up. So it's good to just barely touch it. There we go, so it doesn't come up here. If this falls apart before it gets established, then it can go out. So it's okay to let this build up into a larger ember before you move it. That way, if it does break apart, you can still may have some burning embers. Now here's the bundle I made from the shredded grasses and leaves and plant fibers and mugwort. So now you can see how this reacts. Almost mistake there. Drinking that one piece there. Now sometimes I'll tell students to go ahead and hold the bundle with the board here and the drill in case the ember starts to come out the side, the fire starts to come out the side, it burns your hand and you drop it and the bundle goes out. We want to squeeze it around it a little bit so it has continuous fuel, but we don't want to squeeze it out. We blow gently at first because it's just dust. Once it's not just the dust burning, it's the plant material, we can blow hard, like we're blowing out our candles on our birthday cake. You want to stay on it. See, I get my face in there like I'm going to kiss it, so I don't miss. You could easily go and miss the ember, right? So I get in there like I'm gonna kiss it, like I'm talking on a mic. Pull away, breathe in. Now I don't have to squeeze very hard. I can let my air get in. This is why you want a big bundle. So if that was too small, it could have all turned into an ember without lighting. So once it's a fire, once it's flame, we could pull it apart to keep it going, right? But when it's an ember, we need it compact.